Good afternoon. Welcome to the Charles Jacobs Memorial Lecture. This lecture is an annual feature of this wonderful annual history conference. The lecture is in memory of our renowned local Civil War historian and author, Charles Jacobs. Anybody here know Charles Jacobs? There you go. Terrific. Well, this year's lecture is a program of music of the Civil War era offered by Patrick Lacefield. I suspect that many of us here today recall the musical spirit of our nation during some of our past tumultuous times. World War II in the 1960s come to mind to me. Well, Patrick, a descendant of Civil War veterans, will take us back to those tumultuous times of the Civil War and the music of the era. Please join me in offering a warm welcome to Pat Lacefield.
Well, thanks very much. I think some of you have probably seen some of my programs before. Thanks to Clarence and the Historical Society, I've been doing programs around the county, probably, for a decade, a dozen years, something like that. And I've done them for senior centers, I've done them for elementary schools, I've done them for apartment complexes, and I've had some great highlights. One of the highlights that I had at a big apartment building in Bethesda was that after I did my program, a lady came up to me, pretty old, and she said, I noticed that she'd been singing along a lot during the program. She said, it was so good to hear all those songs. And then she said to me, have you ever heard this one? And then she sang a song called Poor Little Soldier Boy that her grandfather had taught her. Her grandfather, not great-grandfather, her grandfather had been a Confederate telegrapher. And another time when I was talking to second graders, of course when you talk to second graders, you got to, keep it a little light and not talk about 600,000 people dying and all of that kind of stuff. So I was talking about the uniform, and I said, the zipper was not invented until 18 years after the Civil War. So how do you think people held their pants together? And for a minute it was silent, and then at the back of the room a little girl raised her hand. She said, Velcro. The Civil War was full of music, and I don't have enough time in a week to do all the music from the Civil War. I think we all know a few songs, and I know that you're going to hear some probably you haven't heard before. It was a period, we're one country today, but for 4 years we were two countries, and some of the best people in America, as well as some of the scoundrels and opportunists, chose up sides depending on where they were and what was moving them at that particular time. I like to tell the story of family up George Avenue of 97 near Union Mills, called the Shrivers. One side of the family lived on the west side, one side lived on the east side. The side on the west owned slaves and sent their sons to fight for the Union. The folks on the east side didn't have slaves and sent their sons to fight for the Confederates. In Maryland, it was truly brother against brother. It used to be, it all really started a long time ago with original sin, of course, with America, and the institution of slavery. But the thing that really touched off the war, of course, was Abraham Lincoln's election in 1860 in a four-way race. He won about 39% of the vote. Now, in Montgomery County at that time, there were about 18,000 folks. About 11,000 of them were white, about 5,500 were enslaved, about 1,500 were free blacks. And there were 2,000 people that voted in the election of 1860. And Abraham Lincoln got 50 votes here, which means he probably didn't even carry the Quaker vote in Montgomery County. But he had a great campaign song, and it went something like this. Hurrah for the choice of the nation, our chieftain so brave and so true. We'll go for that great reformation, for Lincoln and liberty too. We'll go go for the man from Kentucky, the hero of Hoosierdom through. The pride of the suckers so lucky, for Lincoln and liberty too. We'll find out by felling and hauling how our rail splitter statesmen can do. For the people are everywhere calling for Lincoln and liberty too. Then up with the banner so glorious, the star-spangled red, white, and blue. We'll fight till our banner's victorious, for Lincoln and liberty too. Our young David's sling is unerring, the slavocrat's giant he slew. So go for the freedom preferring, for Lincoln and liberty too. We'll go for the man from Kentucky, the hero of Hoosierdom through. The pride of the sucker so lucky, for Lincoln and liberty too. Now, if you go to that red brick courthouse that was just up on the screen a little while ago, and you look at the tax records for 1860, you'll see next to a lot of people's names, GTV, which meant gone to Virginia. Because obviously Maryland was caught betwixt and between. Some people wanted to secede, some people wanted to stay in the Union. But Lincoln couldn't afford to have Maryland secede and cut off the capital from the rest of the North. So he sort of made sure if there was any question about the matter that Maryland stayed in. But there were a bunch of people who did cross the river, and there were Maryland regiments in the Confederate Army. And there were a lot of raids across the Potomac for the whole course of the war. And this song is about some of that. It's called Riding a Raid. Don't Stonewall the rebel that leans on that sword, and while we are mounting, praise low to the Lord. Now each cavalier that loves honor and right, let him follow the feather of Stuart tonight. Come tighten your girth and slacken your rein. Come buckle your blanket and holster again. Try the click of your trigger and balance your blade, for he must ride sure that goes right in the rain. There's a man in the White House with blood on his mouth. There's knaves in the North, there are braves in the South. We are 3,000 horses and not one afraid. We are 3,000 sabers and not a clean blade. Come tighten your girth and slacken your rein. Come buckle your blanket and holster again. Try the click of your trigger and balance your blade, for he must ride sure that goes right in the rain. To gallop, to swim or to ford, old Stonewall still watching, pray low to the Lord. Goodbye, dear old rebel, that river's not wide. Montgomery's lights in her window to guide. Come tighten your girth and slacken your rein. Unbuckle your blanket and holster again. Try the click of your trigger and balance your blade, for he must ride sure that goes right in the rain. Now, the funny thing about Civil War songs is that once folks got hold of a good tune, you know, they used it on both sides. You know, there's the Dixie we know, and there's the Yankee Dixie. There are two versions of Wait for the Wagon. There's a battle cry of freedom, which is the one we know, and then there's a Confederate one. And people would take all sorts of different airs to write songs. Some of them were Irish drinking songs. Some of them were English songs. Some of them were German songs. Kind of like this one, which maybe you've heard. The despotty lives on my shore, Maryland, my Maryland. His torches at thy temple door, Maryland, my Maryland. Avenge the patriotic gore that flecked the streets of Baltimore, and be the battle queen of yore. Maryland, my Maryland, dear brother, burst the tyrant's chains, not call in vain. Maryland, my Maryland. She meets her sisters on the plain. 6 Semper 'tis the proud refrain that baffles men use back amain. Maryland, my Maryland, I hear the bugles fife and drum. Maryland, my Maryland, that old line bugles fife and drum. Maryland, my Maryland, she is not deaf, nor dead, nor dumb. Huzzah, she spurns the northern scum. She waits, she burns, she'll come, she'll come. Maryland, my Maryland, she waits, she burns, she'll come, she'll come. Maryland, my Maryland. Which, of course, to this day is the state song. There were a number of songs that people loved to march to, and perhaps there was no better marching song than this one. We are going to the field, boys are marching to the fight, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll raise the glorious banner for the Union and the right, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the star. We are going to the field, boys are marching to the fight, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We are springing to the call of the brothers gone before, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll fill the vacant ranks with 1,000,000 free men more, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitor and up with the star. We are going to the field, boys are marching to the fight, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will face the rebel hordes, boys with fearless hearts and true, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll show what Uncle Sam has for loyal men to do, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the star. We are going to the field, boys are marching to the fight, shouting the battle cry of freedom. If we fall amidst the fray, boys, we'll face them to the last, shouting the battle cry of freedom. And our comrades dear will hear us as they go rushing past, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors and up with the star. We are going to the field, boys are marching to the fight, shouting the battle cry of freedom. Probably second to Dixie, this next song is the most popular song in the Confederacy. And I'm going to do some verses for you that are from the Confederate version, and I'm going to slip in a Yankee verse there, and I think you'll be able to tell the difference. Okay, it goes a little bit like this. We are a band of brothers and natives to the soil, fighting for our liberty with treasure, blood, and toil. When our rights are threatened, the cry was near and far. Hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. As long as the Union was faithful to her trust, like friends and like brethren kind were we and just. But now when northern treachery attempts our rights to mar, we hoist on high the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. For gallant South Carolina nobly made the stand, then come Alabama and took her by the hand. And swiftly Mississippi, Georgia and Florida, all raised on high the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah! hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Even the valley gathers round the banner of the right. Texas and fair Louisiana join us in this fight. Davis, our loved president, Stephen, statesman rare, now rally round the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. We do not want your cotton, we care not for your slaves, but rather than divide this land, we'll fill your southern graves. With Lincoln as our chieftain, we'll wear our battle stars. Hurrah for the grand old flag that wears the stripes and stars. Hurrah, hurrah for equal rights, hurrah, hurrah for the grand old flag that wears the stripes and stars. And here's to our Confederacy, strong we are and brave, like patriots of old will fight our heritage to save. And rather than submit to shame, to die we would prefer. So cheer for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah for Southern rights, hurrah, hurrah for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. You know, of course, it's not just, so far I've been singing just Civil War era songs, but of course there's songs that modern musicians do about the Civil War, and I want to do a couple of those for you, some of which you may have heard, some of which maybe you haven't. There's a guy named Steve Earle, who's a country singer, who some of you may know, who did this song about an immigrant who joined up with the Union Army. It goes something like this. I am Kilrain of the 20th Maine, and I come from Ireland. Well, the Brits would hang me for a Fenian, so I took my leave of them. Well, I crossed the ocean in the Erie, and the vilest tub afloat, and the captain's brother was a railwayman. Now he met us at the boat. Now I'm joined up with the 20th Maine. Did I tell you, friends, I'm a fighting man? Won't be back this way again. We're all marching down to Dixieland. I am Kilrain of the 20th Maine, and I fight with Chamberlain, 'cause he stood right with us when the Johnnies came, like a banshee on the run. In the smoke and the hell at Gettysburg, and many a mother wept, and many a good boy died that day, and the air smelled just like death. I am Kilrain of the 20th Maine. Did I tell you, friends, I'm a fighting man? Marching down in the pouring rain, we're all going down to Dixieland. I am Kilrain of the 20th Maine, and I damn all gentlemen whose only worth is the Father's name and the sweat of the working men. Well, we come from the farms and the city streets and many a foreign land, and we spill our blood on a battlefield. Now we're all Americans. I am Kilrain of the 20th Maine. Did I tell you, friends, I'm a fighting man? Won't be back this way again. We're all marching down to Dixieland. Won't be back this way again. We're all marching down to Dixieland. Now, one thing that I usually don't do as part of this act is I usually don't use a tape recording. But it occurred to me the other day that, you know, the song that I just sang, he refers to the Johnnies came like a banshee on the run. The whole question of the rebel yell, you know, which first appeared in the first Battle of Manassas, when Stonewall Jackson told his men, you know, charge them, men, and yell like furies. Okay, for years and years, nobody actually knew what that sounded like, you know? But then they dug up some old recordings of Confederate veterans that they made in the 1920s and the 1930s. And I have a CD here that has, first of all, a recording of an individual doing the rebel yell, and they've authenticated that this is actually it, because there's several others that they compared it against. But then the Museum of the Confederacy down in Richmond was able to take all of the individual recordings and use sound recording and make it appear as if this is what it would sound like if 500 men were saying it, not one. Okay, and let's see if the audiovisual part of this works here. Let's see. I just have to read this as sort of a tie-in to this. This is from Colonel Keller Anderson, who was a colonel in a Kentucky brigade. He said, "Then arose that do-or-die expression, that maniacal maelstrom of sound, that penetrating, rasping, shrieking, blood-curdling noise that could be heard for miles and whose volume reached the heavens. Such an expression that has never yet came from the throats of sane men, but from men whom the seething blast of an imaginary hell would not check while the sound lasted." That guy's got pretty words. But anyway, that's somebody who heard it. And let's see if I can get the...
Now here is one contemporary veteran, rebel yell.
Not exactly what we expect. You know, not like you've heard in the movies or not like you've ever heard anybody do before. Now let's see what we do if we can. We have, I think, what do we have? 500 men. Hold on just a second. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. Sometimes it was more than 500 men. Give you an idea of what he was talking about when you talk about the banshees on the time. Now this is the point in which, I'm just going to help me here. I'm going to do a little bit of a costume change. Because I actually am a Civil War cross-dresser here. My ancestors were Confederate, but I also put on the blue suit. And the nice thing about this is that actually most of the uniform is kind of the same. So I can pretty much just change the tunic. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to tell my favorite Abraham Lincoln story about this costume change. Okay, you know, everybody knows that I think in the day, you know, the White House wasn't like it is today. You know, there's no fence around. I mean, you could just walk right up to it. Come to think of it, things haven't changed much. But anyway, you know, Lincoln used to complain that he couldn't get any work done because people would just walk in on him immediately. And people were constantly, of course, this is before civil service, so people were constantly wanting jobs and all that kind of stuff. So he, you know, one of these days he's got in his office, he's got a bunch of people who are there looking for jobs. And he says, you know, you people here today remind me of a story. Of course, everything reminds me of a story. He says, there's this story about how there was this king. And he went out hunting one day. And he passed this little hut. This peasant said to him, "Oh, king, you don't want to be hunting today because there's going to be a big storm." And the king said, "Oh, no, that's not right. I got my own weather guy back at the palace. And he told me, no problem. It's going to be great weather." So he goes to the forest, and of course there's a huge storm. Washes out his hunt. And he gets back to the palace, says Lincoln, and he fires his weather gun. And he goes, he calls in this peasant. And he says, "The peasant, I want to hire you as my weather person." And, you know, the peasant, "Oh, you don't want me, king." He says, "You want my mule." And the king said, "Well, why do I want your mule?" He said, "Well, it's my mule. Whenever my mule's ears go back, there's going to be a big rainstorm." So, sure enough, he hired the mule. But as Lincoln told those people in the meeting, he says, that's where the real trouble started. Because now all the mules want to work for the government. So, you know, it's interesting when you think about all the things that people had with them, what they carried to war. Because most people rushed to war because they thought they were going to miss it. They thought there'd be one big battle, and they better get there quick, otherwise they were going to miss that excitement and that glory. You know, people then, there's the last war where people thought there would be glory. So people carried lots of strange things with them. For example, a lot of Confederate soldiers carried this. If you haven't seen this, this is a Bowie knife. I'm from Arkansas, and we call this an Arkansas toothpick, where I come from. But pretty soon they figured out that it was going to be pretty hard to get close enough to use one of these. So this was one of the things that got tossed away en route. Another thing that often got tossed away was people noticed that in the areas where troops were filing in to get prepared to go into battle, that they would often see playing cards and dice all over the place. And, you know, the reason for that was simple. That if young men fell in battle, the last thing they wanted was to have their bodies shipped back to their parents with playing cards and dice on them. Because that would mean they'd been sinning. Okay? In fact, a lot of the people in both armies were very religious, and they were religious maybe in a way that many of us aren't religious today. You know, they thought that, well, if things are going well in the war for our side, it must be because the Lord's on our shoulder, and we're doing something right. And so there were revivals in both armies, and there was a lot of believing, and there were songs of faith that came from both armies. And one song on the Union side was a song that was actually written by a guy with a very disreputable reputation. He was the captain of a slave ship. And he's from England. And he was in mid-Atlantic with his unfortunate cargo, and he got an epiphany, which is sort of a fancy way of saying the light bulb went off in his head. And he figured out, you know, I don't want to do this work anymore. So he went back to Britain, and he wrote this song, which goes a little bit like this. Maybe you've heard it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fear relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. And then there were songs such as this one. It goes something like this. God save the South, God save the South, her altars and firesides, God save the South. Now that the war is nigh, now that we arm to die, shouting our battle cry, freedom or death, shouting our battle cry, freedom or death. God be our shield, at home or afield, stretch thine arm over us, strengthen and save. And though they're 3, 2, 1, forward, each siren son, fight till the war is done, fight to the grave, fight till the war is done, fight to the grave. Rebels before, like fathers of yore, rebels the glorious name Washington bore. Now then be us the same, that name he saved from shame, making it first in fame, foremost in war, making it first in fame, foremost in war. Now that the war is nigh, now that we arm to die, shouting our battle cry, freedom or death, shouting our battle cry, freedom or death. Now, of course, there were some songs that were like crossover hits, so to speak, with the same lyrics. And one thing to understand is that, of course, for most of the soldiers who went away to war, particularly the ones who were younger, there was really only one girl in their life at that point, and that was Mama. So there are a lot of Mama songs among Civil War songs, but there's probably none that's quite like this one. Again, a crossover hit for both sides. Just before the battle, mother, I'm thinking most of you, as upon the field we're watching, with the enemy in view. Comrades brave around me lying, full of thoughts of home and God. For well they know that on the morrow some may sleep beneath the sod. Farewell, mother, you may never press me to your breast again. But oh, you'll not forget me, mother, if I'm numbered with the slain. Oh, how I'd love to see you, mother, and those little ones at home. But I'll never leave our banner till in honor I can come. Tell those traitors all around you that their foolish words we know. With every word they kill our soldiers, with the help they give the foe. Farewell, mother, you may never press me to your breast again. But oh, you'll not forget me, mother, if I'm numbered with the slain. Hark, I hear the bugle sounding, that's the signal for the fight. And oh, may God protect us, mother, as he ever does the right. Hear that battle cry of freedom, how it swells upon the air. Oh yes, we'll rally round our banner, or we'll perish nobly there. Farewell, mother, you may never press me to your breast again. But oh, you'll not forget me, mother, if I'm numbered with the slain. Now, as you can imagine, officers on both sides didn't much like to hear songs like this around the campfire, because it made people think of home. It made people think that maybe, good Christian boys like themselves have better things to do than shooting up God's fellow creatures. So officers much preferred songs like this next one. We're the boys so gay and happy, wheresoe'er we chance to meet. If at home or on camp duty, it's the same, we're always free. We left our homes and those we cherish in our good old Texas land. We would rather fight and perish side by side and hand in hand. Then let the Yankees say what they will. We'll be gay and happy still. Gay and happy, gay and happy. We'll be gay and happy still. Old Virginia needs assistance. Northern hordes invade her soil. We'll provide a stern resistance, forged in danger, fire, and toil. Then let the guns and the muskets rattle, fearful as the name they bore. We'll not leave the scene of battle while the Yankees on our soil. Then let the Yankees say what they will. We'll be gay and happy still. Gay and happy, gay and happy. We'll be gay and happy still. Funny thing about that song is that it's absolutely an era song, but it actually sounds like, you know, somebody could jump off a Broadway stage and just break into song there. It's a little different than some of the other style songs back then. As we approach the end of the conflict, there are a couple of songs that I want to do. One is a song that has gone through a lot of different renditions, I guess. You know, it started out as John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. And then, of course, you know, there were people who took it during the war and wrote other lyrics to it. One was, that I'm pretty sure you haven't heard, was actually done by the white captain of a black regiment that was recruited in Union-occupied Arkansas. And that one goes a little bit like this. Oh, we're the body boys from the 1st of Arkansas. We are fighting for the Union, we are fighting for the law. We can knock a rebel farther than a white man ever saw as we go marching on. We are tired of hoeing cotton, we are tired of hoeing corn. We are colored Yankee soldiers just as sure as you are born. When the master sees us coming, he'll think it's Gabriel's horn as we go marching on. Now, of course, later in the civil rights, actually the labor movement, it was, when the Union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there will be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. But what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the Union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. But Julia Ward Howe wrote it a little bit like this. Oh, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath is stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with the glory in his bosom that transfigured you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us fight to make men free, while God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Now on April 9th, 1865, I want to just end there, which is just about the end of the war. General Lee issued his General Order Number 9, which was his farewell order to his troops. And it went something like this. After 4 years of arduous service, marked by unsurpassed courage and fortitude, the Army of Northern Virginia has been compelled to yield to overwhelming numbers and resources. I need not tell the brave survivors of so many hard-fought battles who have remained steadfast to the last that I've consented to this result from no distrust of them, feeling rather that courage and devotion could accomplish little that would compensate for the loss that must have attended the continuance of the conflict. I resolved to avoid the useless sacrifice of those whose past services have so endeared them to their countrymen. Under terms of the agreement, officers and men can return to their homes and remain until exchanged. You take with you the satisfaction that proceeds from the consciousness of duty faithfully performed, and I earnestly pray that a merciful God will extend his protections and blessings. With increasing admiration for your constancy and devotion to your country, and a kind and generous consideration for myself, I bid you all an affectionate farewell. That evening, at the White House, there was a crowd gathered, and there was a band, and Lincoln came out and he said a few words, and he said, you know, there's really one song in this whole conflict that I think is really the best song. It says, and since General Lee has surrendered, I consulted the Attorney General, and we now actually own the rights to this song. So he said, so he asked the band to play this song. It's a song that Teddy Roosevelt once called the greatest piece of martial music ever created by man. Now, of course, Teddy Roosevelt was a little bit of a bloviator, but even so, it goes something like this. Wish I was the land of cotton, old times there and not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born, early on a frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Well, I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Well, there's buckwheat cakes and engine batter, makes you fat or a little bit fatter. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. When you hoe it down and scratch your gravel, to Dixieland I'm bound to travel. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Well, I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Southerns, hear your country call you. Fate much worse than death befall you. To arms, to arms, to arms in Dixie. Lo, all the beacon fires are lighted. Let all hearts be now united. To arms, to arms, to arms in Dixie. Advance the flag of Dixie, hurrah, hurrah. In Dixie's land we'll take our stand to live and die in Dixie. To arms, and conquer peace for Dixie. To arms, and conquer peace for Dixie. I have 2 minutes left. Great. You know, the one thing that I usually spend more time on in presentations, I did a little more singing than I did, you know, equipment mongering here for this particular time, but I did want to point out that, of course, a soldier's best friend back then was his rifle. This is a reproduction of an infield rifle, which would have been carried by both sides. And
Still is.
one thing that you need to know is that, of course, this is a multi-stage process to kind of get one of these things loaded. Now, I've been told not to fire off any shots in the army, so don't worry. Okay. But yeah, I think it would be useful for you to sort of see, you know, very quickly, since we have a minute, what it took to load one of these babies. And basically you would be at this kind of position, and they would say, load. Take it out front, reach into your cartridge, take out a white slip of paper, just like this. Powder rolled in, this is the same amount of powder that would be in the only thing that's missing in this thing, there's no bullet in here. Bite it off, pour the powder down, thumb the bullet down, get rid of this, put it there for now. Ram it down, put it back, because you're going to need it for the next shot. You should have assumed kind of a T firing position, just kind of like this. Sort of up like this. You go off, first you go to half cock, the phrase to go off half cock, that's this. You drop this, it goes off. That's where the phrase began, to go off half cock. Then full cock, reach in. Where's my trusty here? It's over there. It's on the wrong side here, but it would normally be on the other side. You take it off and you put a little cap on, just right here. Got a full cock, aim, fire, and then you do that again. A well-trained person could fire 3 shots in a minute with all of those processes. Now, of course, the other thing that you're often told to do is fix bayonets. So, and this was even though the bayonet was more of a psychological tool, you know, kind of like the rebel yell, except it wasn't nearly as scary as the rebel yell, as you guys heard, right? I want you to all go home and practice your rebel yell tonight. The shower. Just a minute. The shower should make it sound like it's 23rd guy. But, so anyway, the command would be fix bayonets. Fix bayonets. This is a big sealant, so I can actually do this. Now, officers love to have people fix bayonets because, as you can tell, if you've got like a rifle with a bayonet on the top of it, you look really big. Even though your typical height was like 5'3", and your typical weight was like 140, right? With this, you look big. I'm convinced it's the same way as with the furry hats that the British use, you know, to guard the palace or something. They make you look really big. But anyway, so I don't know if do we have time for any questions? A few? Any questions that people have about all this? Yes?
I have heard both ways that one of the things you had to do because you had to bite off the cartridge was you had to have at least 2 teeth in that. Is that true?
Well, it is helpful to have teeth. Yeah, there's no question about it. Yeah, I mean, what you find pretty quickly when you're loading one of these babies is, first of all, your mouth gets pretty black, okay, from the powder. But the other thing is, after you've fired off maybe 3 shots here, this barrel is red hot. So you can imagine in the smoke of a battle, particularly if you have your bayonet on, like look at this, you're having to load with the bayonet on, right? Now right here, I can do this right now, no problem. But in real life, all of the edges of a bayonet were sharpened to razor sharp, right? It wasn't just the point, it was all of the sides. So, you know, it was smoke, fire, people firing you don't want to cut your hand on this, it could be tricky, which is why a lot of Confederate soldiers particularly took the shortcut. What happened to your bayonet, soldier? I lost it, Sarge. Couldn't get away with that in the Union Army quite as much. But yeah, so yeah, teeth help. Teeth was definitely help. Any other questions? Yes?
The story is true that the band would play on one side and the other side would hear them and they would sing again.
Yeah, and they would switch songs. In other words, you know, there were a number of times during the war that there were documented cases of you know, the Union band striking up Dixie and the Confederate band playing, you know, Battle Cry of Freedom or O Columbia or the Star Spangled Banner or some such like that. I mean, you know, bands loomed a little larger in the beginning stages of the war. In the later stages, they dispensed with bands a lot, broke up a lot of the bands so the band members could be stretcher bearers or just stick them in the file in the ranks. But yeah, no, absolutely, it's true.
Sort of non-traditional.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Nobody stood up when you sang Dixie.
Don't need to stand up. Don't need to
When I
stand
was
up.
in elementary school,
All right.
I'm from Ohio.
Right.
When from Virginia.
Right.
Who, as part of the music program, whenever the music teacher came in, they sang Dixie, she stood up in the back, hand over her heart.
Well, it's a free country. People can do what they want. I think the standing up bit, leaving reverence aside, having to stand up has faded away. Yes.
So you sang Albert Pike's words to Dixie.
Right.
How common was that?
Oh, those were pretty common words. It was a version called Everybody's Dixie, and it was written by Albert Pike, who had a very odd career. He was actually from Vermont, but he was a Confederate general, and he mainly commanded Indians. He commanded Indians who fought with the Confederacy, and he wrote that song, those verses. There are, a gazillion verses to that particular version, but yeah, that's from Albert Pike. Very good.
Wilson gave me the runaround trying to find his way.
Oh, okay, all right. And if folks want to come down afterwards and pick up the rifle and rummage around the stuff, feel free. And really, thank you all for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.